your host for another edition of VC TV. I'm joined here with experts from around the world to talk to you about another great set of topics. Each and every day here on VC TV, we cover different industries, different topics, and different technologies on what's happening and what's shifting from the world and perspective of investors. This is important to you, our live audience. If you are an entrepreneur in fundraising, this is the conversation to pay attention to. If you're an investor looking to understand both macro and micro trends and what's shifting around the world, this is the show for you. Today's topics: work, education, and remote tech. All three of these have changed dramatically, as we know, for the past 6 and forever have been changed going forward. And that's what we're here to talk about. What has changed, what has not, what's here to stay, and what's here to go. And before we get started, a thank you to all of you for tuning in. And at any point, if you have any questions, comments, we are live. Feel free to drop them in the comments box. We'll do our best to ask them in real time. If not, we're all available on social media, and feel free to follow up with us afterwards. Also, a big thank you to Elena and to the entire LA Token team for making this possible and bringing us all together into your homes and your screens around the world. Now, without further ado, let's have a little bit of fun and introduce each and every one of our speakers. So as I go around Brady Bunch style, Anoop, let's start with you. Welcome to the show. A little introduction on yourself, a little background on how you got in this space, and we'll go from there.
Thanks, Kyle. Pleasure to be on the show. So I'm the managing partner at Horizon Venture Partners. We're an early stage tech fund based out of India and focused on the Indian market. Probably one of the hottest markets in India, in all over the world at the moment, and for the right reasons, I believe. Large population, lots of exciting things to do, lots of pain points, and creating some new success stories. We've been investing in different areas of fintech, consumer marketplaces, brands, social commerce, even cybersecurity, pre-fund and both post-fund. So I'd be excited to share a few things. And yes, what got me here? Well, I was getting bored. I think bored. I'm trying to be politically correct, so I'm going to avoid some terms, but I was kind of bored in my corporate job. So 2 decades of working for the world's largest corporation, I thought it'll be exciting to work with some of the smallest companies trying to be big and bring that experience over here. So that's what excites me. That's what brings me out of bed every day. So that's what I'm doing. Happy to be here.
I love it. Excited to talk about the Indian market. We've had quite a few guests almost daily here on VC TV, really highlighting what's happening in India. And it's a very important market to pay attention to for those looking at investing globally and not just outside of the Asian markets, but also just at emerging markets. A lot is happening in India, not just now, but in general. So stay tuned. We'll come back. Anoop, welcome. Glad you got bored at your corporate job to come join us on the investment world. It's a lot more fun generally. Little roller coaster, but it's a lot more fun. Gary, welcome to the show. Welcome back. A little introduction and background for those who may not be familiar. Oh.
Sorry about that. My name is Gary Fowler, and I'm an investor. I work in artificial intelligence companies, and I've been doing it for over 30 years. I've had a successful IPO, and really love how this whole digital transformation is changing the world. And I'm focused on it, making the world a bit better place. So we're looking at intergenerational teams, multicultural, regionally diverse. I spent 14 years living in Russia. So I've spent a lot of time in that part of the world. Actually went to school there also. So I'm looking at really cool companies that can make a dramatic impact on our lives. And I believe now is the best time that we've ever seen, because we've now transformed to a different type of society by having this beautiful online world and being extremely efficient. And I think each one of us can take advantage of that.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. And that's what we're all doing here by sharing our knowledge and insights with the audience, and the audience is here listening to us. Plus, I mean, every time I see you, you're in these gorgeous rooms, It's always bright and sunny, so I think you're doing this right here in the new remote world. Erica, welcome to the show. A first-time guest, super excited. Welcome. A little background and introduction on yourself as well.
Yeah, for sure. So my name is Erica Van. I'm an investor at Charles River Ventures. We are a multi-stage firm, but really do focus on early stage. In terms of where we like to spend our time, we have different teams that focus on different things. So we have a consumer team, we have a biotech and healthcare team, and we have an enterprise B2B team. In terms of geo, our investors, we are spread across SF, Palo Alto, Boston, and New York. But we also invest internationally very much as well. And I personally am focused on enterprise B2B companies at the early stage. My background and how I got into VC, I've really worked in kind of finance, tech, and venture capital prior to joining CRV, and love it. It's the best job.
Wonderful. You got 3 additional thumbs up on that one. I think we all love and enjoy it. So welcome everybody again. Happy to have each and every one of you. So let's dive in. All 3 of these topics have been top of mind. Everyone is trying to figure out what the hell has just happened, and whether or not their job is going to be continuing to be remote, whether or not work has changed, whether or not education has changed. We just had some new laws put in place or rulings put in place here in California around the future of virtual education, which leads me to my first question is, what is the current state of remote work and education when it comes to technology? Where are we? How have things changed, and how are things looking ahead as well? And Anoop, let me start with you. When it comes to India, I know you guys are going through a lot of changes right now. What are you seeing as an investor as kind of the current state of, again, these 3 areas, or maybe one in particular that you might be focused on?
So Kyle, what we're seeing in India is we haven't yet reached the peak of the pandemic that's all going on all around the world. And we've had a early stage was marred by lockdown, which particularly focused everyone from school going to college going children, sort of back at home, and everyone was sort of finishing their terms, about 30 days left of that, struggling to get onto an online learning platform, trying to, finish up with the entire coursework and everything and going forward. And thereafter, we're in the middle of summer holidays over here, all around, but in a month or so, everything is going to reopen again. But we're not yet through the peak, and therefore, I think it can be safely said that both the school-going and college-going, kids, as well as the teaching community or the government, is in no position to define as to when can everyone go back to physically attending campus again. And there are scores of Indian students who study in the US or other parts of the world. They're back here in India. I see them all around me, particularly in the place where I live as well. And they don't know either. So I think we are sort of looking towards a whole systemic upheaval, if I may call it. We have 1.5 million schools in the country. There are 260 million children to be educated. It's no mean joke. And we're looking at solutions in live tutoring. We're looking at solutions of all affordable tutoring applications that you can do for covering off all the after school work that we all know has made up a large part of the personalities we are today. So whether it's singing or it's theater or it's art and craft, or so it goes beyond STEM. It goes beyond the coursework. So all of that is got to come together on a viable platform that consumers can access through mobiles or through their laptops. In fact, everyone's sort of upgrading their home Wi-Fis and upgrading their computers because they had absolutely no time when the whole thing was just thrust upon them. So everyone's sort of done that during this time. And everyone's gearing to figure out and use the solution that best suits them. So I think that's where we are. So we're eagerly looking at, I would say, $1 billion companies coming out of solving these pain points. and nobody's going back in a hurry. In fact, the whole system is going to be recast. I think it's going to be a mix of physical and online, and not just physical anymore. Everyone's rethinking through how the dispensing of education is going to be in the months and years ahead.
Yeah, and maybe not even just billions, but I mean all types of size of companies, right? I mean, to Gary's point, you couldn't be a better time. And to your point on the after school programs, I mean, that's how I learned how to be a coder, how to be an engineer. I learned at a very young age thanks to after school programs. And now, if you look at it in the reverse, you're in a situation where you can learn anything from anybody at anywhere in the world at any time. I mean, Gary over here will buy your company for $10,000, and then someone else will sell it for $100,000. Next thing you know, we got hundreds of millions of dollars of companies. It's a great opportunity to start a company at any point right now in any kind of industry, which is exciting. And Eric, I want to come to you. I mean, you guys at CRV, Charles River Ventures, for those, you've invested in a lot of these companies that are thriving right now. But from your standpoint, with your background, where are you seeing the kind of current state of remote software and technology around work and education, furthering on Anoop's point?
Yeah, for sure. So this, similar to the things that he had mentioned that are kind of propelling in the ed tech space, and we see this with like investments in Udacity, which is doing incredible right now. They're in the kind of online courses space. Everyone's learning online. Everything is done online, and classes going in person is not a thing that's happening right now. Remote work is experiencing the same thing. So anything surrounding collaboration, design, workflow, video is something that I've spent a lot of time on. Anything that has like video capabilities that allow people to collaborate with video. So investments that we've kind of made in the past that fall on this theme, and that we continue to look at these themes, like Airtable, which is essentially like a smart worksheet. That company, originally the thesis behind that was not remote work, but it was definitely collaboration, and they've been doing really well. Parable is another company that we invested in that's purely kind of a video collaboration tool for meetings. Slab and knowledge management. I think those are kind of obvious ones that are doing well, but when you pull kind of beyond the kind of tools for meeting tools, or those types of tools, even companies that are focusing on onboarding, so like new employee onboardings, people are joining teams right now never having met their teams. Knowledge management is a space that has always been around, but has never been like a hot space. And it's certainly seeing, as teams are looking for training materials, looking for documentation, looking for anything, like a smarter way to organize kind of the knowledge that sits across, different teams and different geos is definitely, exciting right now. And I think one thing that we've invested in, but continue to look for more investments, is just remote work in the healthcare set. So telehealth has experienced leaps and bounds in terms of regulation movement, HIPAA compliance. We're investors in a company called Wheel, which is in the telehealth staffing opportunity space. And just, people seeing doctors online, there are different types of doctors. So, from, psychologists to just your regular medical, like GP. That space is something that we continue to watch, and that is remote work. It's like doctors working remotely. But that's a space that we're super excited about, and that we're continuing to hunt for companies there.
It's a great point. And real quick, I want to come back to knowledge management. So traditionally, I think knowledge management would have been defined as just an online or an intranet hub for documents. So somewhere internally that you could access company documentation, or in some cases, a wiki, or even a GitHub account. Could you define that just a little bit more for our audience that may not be familiar with that area, and kind of why it's exploding?
Yeah. So I think the traditional knowledge management, or like the older version of what knowledge management was like the intranet, right? Yeah. So not the internet, but the intranet. And many companies and larger corporations had an intranet, which is a database or a website where you store, materials that are used across teams, across different lines of businesses within an organization. Traditionally, SharePoint is an example of that, which was a tool that, I had used in the past when I had worked at like bigger companies as well. And I think there's certainly a next generation of that where it's not even like foldering and like new ways of tagging or new ways of finding and discovering content that was before hidden in like a million folders, right? You see companies, Slab is a company that we've invested in the knowledge management space that makes that easier. You see kind of even more social iterations of that, like WorkVivo is a company that makes it more social, a more social experience in terms of like sharing knowledge across teams and making it more fun. And I think it's become more critical and content needs to be more easily discovered, especially as everything is digitized and moved online. So we're certainly, and knowledge management, I feel like it's always been around, like people have always kind of thought about it, but it's never been like a hot space, but it's certainly becoming, there's social pieces to it, adding emojis, like, adding social feeds, like tagging people. Those are things that we're seeing in terms of the way teams communicate, and share just, knowledge that has been accumulated over time across different teams.
I mean, everyone loves a good emoji. And now and then being tossed around it puts a smile on everyone's faces. Even a noob, he heard SharePoint and got a little shaky, and seeing an emoji gave him a big smile. So Gary, same to you. So where do you see the current state of both work and education as opposed, or when it comes to this remote software and technology being implemented?
Well, I mean, I have the pleasure of co-founding one of the top 10 AI WorkTech companies, Yva.ai, a few years ago. So, I mean, I have a bit of understanding of it. And I mean, think about where we are today. How many people are online and not in their offices? I mean, it's, 75, 80% of white collar workers are not in their offices today. How do we manage those folks? How do we keep them happy? How do we keep them engaged? How do we understand what kind of relationships, what their sentiments are? Are they doing a great job with the customers? And there's another thing about, having this company relationship, right? How do we get ratings? How do we get our performance reviews? I mean, this is something that we got to address now. And I said before, 4 months ago, 30 million people were using Zoom every day. Now there's 300 million people. Mm-hmm. I remember 5 years ago when I used Zoom, nobody had heard about it.
Same.
Right? I mean, think about it. Our lives have changed. I just wrote an article. Actually, I have one in Forbes and also on Medium about the digital transformation post-COVID. Everything we do is affected. It will never be exactly the same. So work has changed. And the good news is, McKinsey said that 92% of the companies worldwide were already talking about digital transformation. It just happened instead of 5 or 10 years, it happened in months. It's happening today. Each one of us on the call have the greatest opportunity that we've ever had to be part of this change. I mean, this is something that is unparalleled. So when we take things like artificial intelligence, and I'm not talking about just saying AI, I'm talking about semi-supervised, unsupervised, ladder networks, variational autocoders, knowledge graphs, like deep AI to be able to help us solve the problem, just like Eric did with Zoom. Then this is the time that we need to do it. Let's not be afraid of it. Let's do it. We know we're going to be working remote. We know there's transitions taking place from people moving out of, and I'm from Silicon Valley too, but I'm stuck in my place in Palm Beach in Florida. I can't get out. So there are a lot of us out there. What we got to do is, how can we maximize the opportunity? Think about how much more efficient people are today online than they were 5 months ago, because you're not flying on a plane. I don't have to go out to San Francisco or New York or Chicago. How much money am I saving? And those are the kind of things, understanding WorkTech, understanding how to make our lives more efficient. And in a lot of ways, our quality of our lives have changed too. How many times during these calls does somebody have their dog come, their cat? People have changed in a good way. This is not all bad. I mean, COVID sucks, but it's not all bad how it's made our society a bit better. So we have an opportunity as investors. We have an opportunity as leaders. We got to get the message out. Let's take advantage of this. Let's make the world a bit better place, and let's connect together using this digital transformation as a platform.
Agreed. And I'm still waiting for the dog to jump on an episode of VCTV. We haven't had it yet, but soon. Absolutely agreed. And Tess, welcome to the show. We'll get to your intro in a little bit, but to the question, what is the current state from your view of remote work and education technology? There's been a lot already talked about, but we'd love to hear your standpoint, also being here in the Bay Area and San Francisco as well.
Thank you, Kyle. Awesome. So I think a lot of the things that the other panelists said has been spot on. Some contributive points I would like to make about RemoteTech. I invest in early stage, had a few exits through some of my entities, one in VR tech, one in biotech, the other in construction tech. What I've seen from my own experience from investing early to later is as long as there's good product market fit, the founding team is going to be able to adapt to, the market situation. And what I personally recently have really noticed is, for example, platforms that are like LinkedIn, they actually are transforming themselves at the fastest rate that I've been impressed with, largely because I look at how they've been acquiring various startups. I see the fact that with COVID, us being in this remote work arrangement, and being able to figure out what are the best tools for working remotely, LinkedIn has really come up with some of that. And I think we can take some inspirations, meaning that they immediately were able to already start testing live platform, being able to moderate and host events there and partner up with some of the big platforms. What I really like is I myself, when I host my events remotely, I would plan to use that because all my contacts are already there. We all share and post our events, on LinkedIn. And it's just so intuitive and also frictionless and efficient. And I've been telling so many people about the awesome things that's happening there, largely because they've also recruited a lot of my Stanford friends, other, serial entrepreneurs that I never thought they were recruitable. They haven't started their next startup because they've seen what's happening with what LinkedIn's product offering is offering. Combined with one of my portfolio companies, Login, they do, biometric. And the fact that they are able to allow SMBs be able to, have certified FIDO2 technology to focus on helping them, eliminate passwords. So they have a self-serve model where anyone that builds a new startup and remotely, we're going to see this is going to happen a lot with the work rearrangement remotely, mainly because this is a time, unfortunately, people are getting laid off. So there will be more entrepreneurs. More entrepreneurs means more websites that's going to go up, and they would love to have, be compliant and also be, with the modern way of how websites and, apps are going to be built. They won't need to physically log in. They can use the biometrics. And I think that's, a B2B, also a B2C play. So personally, of course, I think that's pretty brilliant. Combining with, compliance as a service, because more and more, regulations is involved in that. So I think, combined with what's happening with some of these tech companies, startups, I think being nimble and just being able to monitor, what are the needs as we work remotely right now. I can speak more about that in the next question, but I think those are some critical points. Thanks, Kyle.
No, it's great. Yeah, it's great. And both you and Erica teed something up for kind of my next question. And that's, looking at other industries that have begun to thrive because of remote technologies and really the acceleration of these things being digitized, right? So Erica brings up, telepresence, you're bringing up identity and authentication along with events. Erica, would love to come to you first. What are you seeing as industries outside of work and education that we're starting to see really begin to thrive due to new remote technologies?
Yeah, for sure. So I think one space that we've invested heavily in and we're excited about, it's an obvious one, but it's certainly taken, different kind of twists and turns and has accelerated. E-commerce, for example, had been rising at a really strong rate, but the leaps and bounds that e-commerce has taken in COVID has been crazy. And so what does that mean? So the entire ecosystem within e-commerce that we've been looking at, delivery. So delivery is everyone wants, same day delivery. What does that mean? Logistics, supply chain optimization. We're certainly looking at those spaces because the companies feel so much demand to get their goods out on time and not have delays and not have someone tweet and like get upset about kind of, oh, my package arrived incomplete or whatnot. So delivery, kind of logistics optimization, as well as identity management, which Tess had mentioned before. We've invested a lot in the space in companies like OneLogin. And you just see the fact that everyone's working remotely and you need to have a secure way to log in from home. So like remote devices, what that means from a security perspective. Those are kind of the places that we've been spending a lot of time in as those are kind of areas that we think are accelerated by COVID and will stick. There are certainly a lot of times where we spend time in a space where we think it's COVID specific. So like we think, fine, this is like very much something that will thrive in COVID, but won't really thrive after. But I think when we've kind of done our research and had our conversations, those are the spaces where we're spending time where we think it's kind of like a long-term impact that will change the industry for good.
Could you share one or two of those that are maybe just specific to this time frame that you guys have looked at?
In the e-commerce space, we have an investment in a company called Standard Cognition. So Standard Cognition is kind of like a next generation Amazon Go. So with the whole point of people don't want to interact with people in a store, people don't want to take out their wallets. They want to be able to walk in and walk out with a good contact, like not having contact with someone in a store, not having to take out their wallet. That's an investment that we're super excited about because we feel like that will be propelled by COVID, right? People are used to just not wanting to like touch things or interact with people like in a public space. In the kind of transportation and logistics space, we have an investment in a company called Zoba. It's a very early stage company, but they really do demand optimization in the mobility space. So getting you from point A to point B in the most efficient way, in a timely way, in the best routing, like routing and kind of on-demand services. Those are places that we're super excited about.
Got it. Awesome. And Anoop, want to come to you for the same question. What are you seeing industry-wise that's being accelerated and thriving right now?
Well, Kyle, there's been a movement all around. So I think there is no sector actually which is untouched by what's happening around us. And I think Gary was talking about that. So we've seen one of our investments in the health space. India has 70 million diabetics and they need to take care of themselves. And it's not rocket science. But pretty much like Livongo in the US, which recently did its IPO, one of our investees, Vito, is helping diabetes being managed by the person themselves using an IoT device, which is connected to their smartphones. And you've got a whole cloud-based app ecosystem, which is helping you to buy medicines, book doctor consultations, purchase diagnostic tests. Somebody comes home, collects that sample, and also plot your charts. It can connect with your Fitbit and Google Fit, to give you an accurate representation of what lifestyle you're leading, your medical adherence, all of those things. So it's really helping a person to remotely being able to manage their health, without help from a whole ecosystem, which was especially in India. I don't know how it is in other parts of the world, but it's kind of left to you all alone. It's kind of broken. I mean, the doctor doesn't communicate to the pharmacy doesn't communicate to the IoT device that you're using to measure sugar. All of them are not connected with each other. So you never see things in a dashboard, but here you can. Similarly, in the SME space, the small and medium businesses, I think this has been a revolution of sorts. The whole pandemic, with shuttering of stores during a lockdown that we had, which was of course government imposed, but everyone's realized the power of productivity, and everyone's trying to do more with less. And the only way you can do it is through technology. So one of our existing portfolio companies called Gully Network, which literally in the local language means street corner shop. It is helping the neighborhood corner store, which is just 50 square meters, do its grocery retailing business, right, with just 2 people, managing the entire aspect of the store, right from supply, ordering, working capital, inventory, accounting, the general sales tax payments, and it's going to hook up with all the delivery players to make sure that the consumers are hooked up on the front end as well as they're scaling up. So there are numerous examples. Even on the lending side, we're all familiar with Brex in the US. So we invested in the Brex equivalent in Asia, which is called Carbon Card, and they've been digitally been able to underwrite startups which are Series A plus and extend them commercial credit because startups find it the hardest to get commercial credit for their monthly expenses and get an Amex card or get a corporate card being issued. And that's how Brex came up, over there, and Carbon Card's doing the same thing in India and parts of Southeast Asia, which they will expand to shortly. So we've all learned how to devise our work remotely through technology. And in a place like India, where there is millions of consumers, you have to do this at low cost. Otherwise, it ain't flying. So everyone's hungry for it. You provide the right solution, high tech at low cost. So you got millions of people being able to pay a small amount, and you got a $1 billion business going. So that's exactly how economies are turning around and are able to afford these changes and are accelerating it. I mean, it's just crazy. We have 660 million mobile devices in India right now. I mean, it's just phenomenal. It's just crazy.
Well, and what you're mentioning too, happening throughout Asia, and more specifically Southeast Asia, but we'll speak about Asia in the whole. A lot of the technologies that we're seeing digitized or accelerated globally have actually been thriving in Asia for quite a bit of time, and have been making their way through various parts of Asia to now hitting us on a global scale. And so it's exciting to see that mass, or that greater mass adoption,
Sure.
but really the improvement of said technologies, right? Just the cornerstone logistics you were talking about. I mean, this is something that Alibaba was doing, I would say, in the past 2 to 3 years, right? They were digitizing that supply chain to make it easier for their customers to hold less inventory, better understand their customers without having these type of digital systems in place, right? Where it was just generally paper and pencil. It's phenomenal to see that now become a thriving area globally. So if you weren't making investments in Asia, now you can look at companies that are doing this everywhere, because it is going to be here, right? The what we traditionally refer to as the mom and pop shops, all these types of stores are going to have that digital presence, right? Inventory management is going to be a part of it. We talked on previous episodes about the idea of hyper-localized supply chains and logistics centers, along with just general warehousing. All right, your warehouse management will no longer be states away; it'll be hyper-local in regions, and we've seen that with SD. I mean, SD has exploded. ETSY has exploded because of these types of things. And so, to Erica's point about e-commerce, so Anoop, Erica, you guys are right on point. Gary, I'm coming to you, and Tess, I'm coming to you. What else are you seeing thriving industry-wise?
Yeah, so I mean, again, I just want to say that if we look at it today, we're looking at artificial intelligence as really the new electricity, right? Some people have talked about it over the last few months, but really the changes that are taking place are similar to what happened at the beginning of the 20th century. I mean, look at what happened in agricultural, manufacturing, et cetera. And we're at that cusp now. So we're looking at companies that are right on the leading edge through my venture studio, GSD Venture Studios. So aging in place. We have a problem today, 46 million people with the age of 65 and above. How do we deliver great quality care? How do we give people peace of mind? It's something that people, they don't want to talk about. But having, have gone through it myself, and I'm the co-founder of Zemply. One of the things that happened is, when I was out in California, my father was in Pennsylvania, I wanted to know what was going on with my dad. And I wanted my dad to have a quality of life. And it's crazy. We talk about nursing homes, they cost $14,000 a month. And I put my dad in the house, and it was less than $10,000 in his life. He lived 3 years. So how do we increase the quality of life? So Zemply, what we did is we said, what if we use artificial intelligence and sensors, right? And then what if we get Medicaid to be able to pay off? So I started a company about 1.5 years ago with an MBA from Stanford, and it's crushing it, just crushing it. Companies like that, companies like IREX, the whole issue we have today, people are afraid to go in retail stores, right? Being able to do thermal detection, you go in there and you're looking everybody around. Are they going to sneeze? Should I run? You know what I mean? It's like somebody's trying to shoot you when they sneeze, And so how do we go down through with thermal detection to be able to tell, to make it a safer place for folks? How do we enforce social distancing? So we have a company called IREX. IREX is already doing about $3 million in revenue. We've $100 million in the pipeline today with that company, and it's a relatively new company. Because we're addressing a problem, we pivoted a bit, right? We were primarily in security. We pivoted over to the whole COVID environment. And let me tell you, stadiums, how many stadiums are having participants today? It's closed down. Well, they need to open up. Technologies like this will help. The other thing is, you know, again, with the AI, ad tech, people say, oh, ad tech's not so interesting. But when you start to talk about ad tech to detect fraud, it becomes very, very interesting. So we started a company a couple of years ago, and last year we did almost $11 million in business with the company for ad tech because we're detecting fraud, right? Because there's a lot of fraud. Simple thing. So anything that applies incredible artificial intelligence to be able to solve a problem, that's when we founded Yva, on my company side, we did first a Google-like search for the personal cloud, right? We all have 3 to 5 email addresses. Then we have Dropbox, Box, Google Drive, etc. And you say, do you remember I sent you a PowerPoint presentation? And they said, well, I don't remember seeing it. Where did you send it? WhatsApp, Telegram, etc. So what we did is we used the AI to be able to scour all this information. And each one of us here has about 300,000 items within your personal cloud. In 1996, the entire web, the World Wide Web, had only 257,000 websites. That number doubles every year. Think about it. It's a credible problem for all of us to solve. We have infobesity. We'll have 10 million items in our personal cloud in 5 years. And today, each one of us on the phone, you got Stanford, MIT, Harvard, whatever, IIT, we all have the same problem. We're dominated by information. So systems that can help us to be able to make our lives better, smart, intelligent assistants are gonna really work. We're having the problem now with this infobesity, and it's something that needs to be solved. I'm invested in those kind of technologies that make a difference.
I like it. Smart intelligence, smart assistants. I would love that to handle Zoom calls. But Tess, to you, same. What other industries are you seeing kind of thrive out of this as well?
I've been very excited, Kyle. Recently this week, there was a couple of public updates from some various investors that shared a thesis that I really believed in. I actually never had a chance to talk about this with the token and you, even though I've been on several panels. It's the rise of the influencers that finally VCs, investors, you know, my colleagues have recognized with the fact that we are all remote now. How do you get the attention as a startup, as a company of the audience? So I was super excited when I saw that several friends, the background to this is as a founder myself that started a company undergrad, it was acquired. Then I decided to go into venture, mainly because I wanted to start another company in some time, but I need to understand how investors think and kind of what the trends are. So I've always been whispering to my friends at Stanford that are the ones that actually then broke into VC, and they're looking to get into the best deals. And I shared, look at Canada, because as a someone who was born and raised in Canada, the best AI to the topic of what the other panelist was talking about does come from Toronto, from University of Toronto, University of Waterloo, University of Montreal. So I had a chance to really direct a lot of VCs to around some of those great sources of absolutely great startups. Many of those people are friends. So what I've been telling them is I really believe Asia has always been very big on KOLs, which are subject matter experts. And they've been able to utilize this on social media. Even on WeChat, they would simply, an average person would have XYZ amount of followers, and they would be able to get so much business with their startup. It was super impressive. And if you are not on WeChat early, you would not see their impact. And it was absolutely just sharing what they bought and how they bought it and all the different e-commerce type of arrangement. So what's happening in the Valley and in North America finally is the marriage of, I would say, venture capital and Hollywood. That itself, finally, they have caught on in a big way. And why I have seen this validated is I also have, I invest largely out of Silicon Valley, but I also invest in fintech, which means emerging market Southeast Asia. I spent, a decent amount of time in Jakarta, Indonesia, mainly because I see that they leapfrog the tech that they are doing, and the adoption is incredible. So I go there to learn from my other Stanford VC friends and family offices there. I saw the impact of the last 5 years, how the last year, a coffee chain, but had some pretty social aspects to it, was invested by Serena Williams. And absolutely, I think it was Jay-Z. And then that coffee chain went gangbusters, according to my VC friends there. And it was super impressive because they not only are the investor, but they're also the evangelizer. So I really believe this is going to be a theme across the board. And, usually I just think a lot and I just, listen to what all the other panel says. I didn't really want to share that yet on any of the panels until it totally got validated and it was in the market. So a lot of the friends and companies I've been sharing with them of what they probably can invest in. I can't say that, the coffee chain, I had a, play in it, but there are other companies that are up and coming that I think really will be very attractive, because largely I don't think that many people have thought about this thesis and thought about, what is it going to take us to the next level? So, very excited with that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Kyle.
Yeah, the KOL situation in Asia is just it's something that has not been replicated well anywhere else, and it does really help drive and thrive an industry or a particular company in ways. And now that everything is being digitized, you're right. So not only are we as founders or investors having to be evangelists, but the companies themselves are more out there. One thing I've noticed as a trend is customers. More than ever are very big evangelists, right? It's not about wearing the Nike t-shirt that makes you the evangelist. It's actually getting out there and talking about the small little product that you bought, how great it is, how helpful it's been, or not talking about it because you don't want it to sell out. But what you're seeing is that a lot of the customers have become bigger and bigger evangelists and becoming influencers in their own rights, which is exciting to see and may play a role in this subject we've talked about in other episodes of a new driven economy, right? Whether that be data driven, whether that be just a customer economy, there's going to be new ways for customers to play on that. But all this being said, let's take a look at our crystal ball for a minute. We've talked about what just happened and what has changed. Let's talk about what things look like going forward. So looking into your crystal ball, what do the next 6 to 12 months really look like for you, each of you in these industries, whether that be investments, whether that be industries that are thriving? What do you see happening in the next 6 to 12? Because there are some questions, even what we talked about, and some things that are kind of unsure. So Gary, let's start with you. Next 6 to 12, you're looking at your crystal ball. What do you see kind of shifting or changing?
Yeah, so I've been working on a project for about the last 5 years. And what I see is really now is the time for that type of a project to go forward. So I just wrote an article in Medium about intergenerational, right? Bringing people that have skill and experience and knowledge and context as part of a team, multicultural teams, because diversity breeds a lot of great ideas, and then regionally diverse. And I think if we look at the future, we've got to use the resources that we have available. So about a year ago, I put one of the board members of the NAACP on my board of advisors. This is before anybody talked about the current situation. I think we need to use our resources better than we're doing today. So one of the things, I had one of my rapper friends, Medina, who's works for Tyler Perry, joined this team and actually went to Harvard and studied artificial intelligence in Stanford, by the way. And people said you couldn't do it. He did it. And I put him into a blockchain company and he thrived. And so I think we need to use our resources more wisely than we've ever done before, and to be able to bring everybody and give everybody an equal shot, and also to show role models for people that in tech, there's a lot of opportunity for everybody to go forward. And I'm putting my money, I was, when I was in Russia, I actually funded 50% of my classes for I started the first accelerator in Russia for female entrepreneurs because I thought it was the right thing to do. And I think that now going forward, we got to use our resources more wisely than we've ever done before. And we got to look, it's not bad having gray hair to have people like that as part of a team. In Silicon Valley, I live out in Silicon Valley most of the time. I mean, it's like, oh, I'm not sure I want that kind of a person as part of the team. We need to be vibrant, but you need a mixed team in order to be incredibly successful. And now where we are with the digital transformation, it's more powerful now than ever. So I see in 12 months, those companies that do that and abide by that kind of a culturally diverse, regionally diverse model are going to win, because it's the way that we can be successful. It's good to have some gray hair. It's good to have the folks from, in Eric's case, what is it, 38th and Walnut and the University of Pennsylvania. It's good to have those diverse teams, or Stanford and Palo Alto, together. I mean, we all can do it if we work together. The Germans have a phrase, Gestalt, the sum of the parts equal the whole. Today's the time, from now to 12 months from now, that the companies that do that are going to win.
I'm glad I'm sitting on the border of that, a little bit of gray hair and a little bit of non-gray hair. But jokes aside, I completely agree. The idea of distributed and also just general all ways, right, regionally and also culturally, is a big role to play in the next 6 months. And Erica, coming to you, looking into this crystal ball, we kind of chatted about this offline yesterday. What are you looking at, and what's getting you excited on where this kind of shifts and shapes out in the next 6 to 12?
So, we think about this, every day. And we get asked this a lot, just because CRV's been through kind of, multiple cycles of downturns and recessions. And the thing that is really interesting, our founder actually still comes into the office, and he started the firm 50 years ago, and he'll talk about this, like, oh, like this recession, like, oh, this time, like I've been through it. You never can actually know. That's the thing. So we keep asking him, like, what did you see? What did you see? What can we learn? It's never the same. Like how the market responds, how people respond, how consumer habits change, they're always different because every generation is so different. So it's very, very tough for us to, say in 6 months or 12 months, we think this is going to happen. We see this when, in the first couple of weeks of when COVID hit, we certainly, spent a lot of time with our portfolio companies and not bucketed, but just, okay, these are the industries that are going to get hit. These are the ones that are going to do well. And, we were 50% right, like thinking about them. Like we never thought that delivery would be a thing. We thought no one would want to take outside goods. We thought that people wouldn't be buying things and like touching things because like COVID, but like, for example, like DoorDash is like crushing it. That's one of our companies. Like you never think that someone would want someone to touch your food in times of COVID, but they are. So the thing that we tell our companies and the way that we think about investing is really looking at the data. And encouraging our portfolio companies for their own, customers, as well as us when we're looking in the market. We talk to a ton of customers and buyers. We're spending a lot of time talking to corporations, understanding their buying behaviors, right? Because there's definitely going to be a lag when they realize they need something and when they actually go and make kind of that enterprise sale. So for us, like what we've been doing is listening to the data, talking to customers. We learn from a lot of our portfolio companies from what their customers want. So really having even our early companies invest in like customer experience or kind of customer support to just get that information from the market. So like that's rather than kind of, trying to figure it out 6 to 12 months, because we really do feel like you just never know. You really don't know what's going to happen. Those are kind of the actions we've been taking to try and identify that. But I mean, in the general sense, the things that I mentioned before, e-commerce, supply chain optimization, like telehealth, logistics, like collaboration tools, privacy, video, those are the spaces we've looked at, but really, and then it changes day by day and you just never know. Sorry if that's not
day by day. In some cases, hour by hour. Yeah. I mean, this is crazy town. You look back to the point, many of us, all of us actually, on this have lived through a few cycles. And there were some things we can reflect back on now and say, yeah, that makes sense. Or there were things that we could see during that time of, this may or may not shift. Right now, it is a total, to your point, just a gamble. You really have to look at the data and make quick decisions that in terms of distributed choices, as Gary mentioned, because it's anybody's game, it's anybody's question. As things are changing day by day, you need to be able to react to that. And working with your portfolio companies, we did the same. And one of the things we found is that the first month and a half was a lot of just arbitrage. Let's do this, let's do that, make sure you're safe here. Look at this opportunity. Now, let's get into this mode of just playing offense and defense, but continuing to move the business forward and just looking for those opportunities, which we're going to come back to. Anoop, anything else from your side? Crystal ball, what are you seeing in the next 6 to 12?
So I think, look, earlier we used to often wonder when it came to digital adoption about the whys and whens. And Philip Kotler, used to talk about early adopters, early majority, late majority, and all of that. I think all of that has come sort of crashing and all got compressed into one big, large bubble thanks to COVID. So the question is not now why or when, but the question is how soon and how much. And it's all coming at us. It is all happening around us. And I think in parts of Asia, at least where I come from, digital adoption and the need to change has never been so severely felt to manage your life and to run your life as normally as possible. And I also agree with Gary, the overall theme is about managing with what you have, getting more out of less. We've all realized that we've all accumulated these nice, product libraries all around us. Our cupboards are probably overflowing. The urban Indian household certainly has started to think about where do they want to really spend. And people want to spend, and they always said that they want to spend where they get value, but value for them today onwards means something else. So we are talking about trends like greater degree of personalization and broadened through tech. We're not going to, scroll across supermarket shelves and figure out which product is meant for us. Let the tech platform that we are on take the data from us and suggest the products back to us. Okay, so businesses are being built around that. So personalized nutrition should lead to product purchases and not the other way around that I, buy a product and then I figure out, hey, what is my body got or what am I missing now? Greater degree of digital adoption for small and medium businesses is something which is being seen as a trend around here in India and Asia. So for the first time, I think the consumers are now ready, businesses are now ready to pay for technology. Earlier, it was a lot about, hey, download something for free and let's see if I can go far with it. Let's see if I can use it. And a lot of startups were therefore built around subsidizing the initial wave of consumers and then figuring out when there were millions of them to start charging them in small bits and in bits and pieces and sort of making that move. But today, if you have a good product, a good UI and UX, and you're genuinely solving somebody's problem and helping them sort of move the needle on productivity, you can start charging from day one. And they will, like to your point earlier, they will advocate your product to many other people. And guess what? Digitally so. I mean, there are 800 million people using WhatsApp today. And we all know about the Facebook investment into geo platforms into India. There's $12 billion comes into one company in 12 weeks. I mean, it's just phenomenal. And all of it happened during this period. So I think it's all changing for the better. It's all about empowerment, greater degree of personalization, high tech at low cost, and consumers' mindset changing to saying, how soon can I do this and how much can I handle?
Yeah. Gary, you had something you wanted to add on.
Yeah. I just want to say, Erica made a really good point, and I just wanted to add to that. So in the late 90s, I was asked by Oak Investment Partners to become a senior vice president of a little tiny company out of Israel. And as we all know, in 2000, the market just collapsed, right? In March of 2000, the market collapsed. They said we would not be in business. They said everything was dire. The predictions are bad. This is never going to come back again, et cetera. Well, I changed the name of the company from IET to a new company. We did a Nasdaq IPO in June. We didn't raise a lot of money, $28 million, but we did it. The company succeeded, came out with a new family of products, Click Clam, Click Fix, Click Analyze, et cetera. The company was sold to Salesforce for $1.35 billion in August of last year. It was Click Software. I know I named the company. So what I got to tell you is that if we focus on the negative, you're going to get negative stuff. Let's focus on the positive and look at where we can go. That's exactly what we did with Click Software. And it's a story. So each one, I've been around a long time and I have seen it, many upturns and downturns. I know one thing is let's look for the positive and figure out how we can all, be successful, help our companies grow and make some money to be able to share.
Absolutely. So we're at almost the quick hours. So it is Partner Monday, and I want to be sensitive to all of you for that. So I've got a few more questions, rapid fire. Tess, you got 30 seconds if you want to add on to that, and I've got a few questions. We'll do a lightning round, and then we'll wrap up with your guys' closing thoughts. So yeah. Tess, quick point.
So I believe that how I look at my crystal ball is what I, as a Tess, or my friends joke Tessism, is the thesis of AI online and offline. How I think about that and why I coined that such is the following. I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities, and we need this in the areas of service providers that eventually are going to come to your house, because children these days are not going to have the full experience of education. We as caregivers, those who need caregivers to care for their, elderlies and their young ones, how are you going to qualify them? So obviously, there's going to be services that's needed where you're going to have to hire people that are certified COVID-free. They've had their test done, they have their certificate, they can prove that. They ongoing will do that. And do they have the knowledge that they need to actually, have prevention awareness? Combined with the fact that I think the concierge as a service concept is probably going to be embraced more, but at a different iteration. That's where I say the AI offline, meaning these people are going to have to be your walking AI. They're going to have to tell you, okay, the newest and latest with COVID. What are the prevention? These are the masks. What are we doing now? Like you said, Kyle, every hour everything's changing. We are not going to be up to date as much. There are going to be services and people that's knowledgeable that's going to need this. Combined with the back end technology are people that's going to be running the AI, and we're feeding the data in. Those companies obviously is going to excel and being able to build off these iterations. So there's more on my crystal ball, but I'm going to leave it at that, Kyle.
No, it's perfect. And we'll get back to that on closing thoughts. I want to go to the lightning round real quick. So Erica, I'm going to start with you. What are some of the current or unseen risks when investing in these areas? Because there are some. So that's your lightning round question. Go.
Sure. So I think when you think about the impact of COVID, it certainly has negatively affected some companies, but it certainly has positively really affected companies. For example, collaboration tools and tools for distributed teams, right? We're seeing, growth go from this to like this. But this does not happen forever, right? The growth trajectory will not be like this. And companies that are really thriving in COVID really need to think about, once people start kind of adjusting to the new world, when people start returning to the office, how are they going to maintain that growth? Every company is going to start to go like this, and then sadly it might start to go like this. But like, what are the things that you can do to make sure that stickiness and churn, and there's limited churn. Churn kills SaaS businesses, right? So, look at, like, in terms of things that you can do, like work on product as an investor, helping your companies work on product development with your companies, trying to find different ways to make your product more sticky, really study churn, investing in customer support, customer experience, study kind of cohorts, kind of really, again, looking at the data and figuring out ways to help that software stick, especially for companies that are very COVID specific, where you can assume that it will drop post-COVID.
Absolutely agree. And I know you got to drop off here in a minute. So real quick, where can everyone find you online before you have to head to your partner meeting?
Sure. You can find me on LinkedIn, Erica Van, ERICA space VAN. And my email is just erica@crv.com. It's on the website.
Awesome. Tess, Gary, your lightning round question. See you, Erica. Have a great day. Enjoy it. Tess and Gary, for you, where are the opportunities to build and or invest in these areas right now? You both focus generally, but also very specifically on some core techs that thrive in this. So Tess, let's start with you. What are some opportunities to build in this space or invest?
For me, I 100% believe it's in privacy, because think about how many more users are now online versus before and using all these tools to work remotely, the concentration. And how do you govern this? So privacy as a service, privacy, the privacy by design, expert, Ann Kavukian, she's amazing. Anyone who needs to look into that, a company needs to definitely start thinking about privacy and have it built in the core tech, into the culture and into the company plan. Otherwise, they're going to be fined heavily. So I really do think no matter how great of an idea you have, if you don't look into the regulations that's coming down on privacy and look at these startups and tools that is going to help you simplify this so that it's compliance as a service, which is, my top portfolio company Login is doing, and some other great people in the space, that I really emphasize. As a person, individual who's sleeping on panels, because you don't want to start something and have the dream just be diminished, because that is something that people's not used to yet. But I looked at that thesis for 2 years, found the right companies that can do that. I heavily suggest every startup needs to look into this so that they can have a good chance of survival and then thriving.
Privacy regulation. Pay attention to it, everybody. Gary, same to you. Anoop, I'm going to probably come to you on this one, but be ready for a different question. Gary, to you.
Yeah, so I really look at 3 areas that's really interesting. So as I said, aging in place. So how do we make life better? The other thing is I'm looking at security in the post-COVID world. How do we be able to adjust to this post-COVID world with facial recognition, thermal detection, that kind of thing? How do we open up again? And I think we're still in a dilemma about how to do it for stadium security, for smart cities, that kind of thing. And how do we do it, taking in place all the politics that are out there today? And then again, I'm looking at where we can create efficiencies in remote worker management. How do we make that better? How do we make it more efficient? How do we really integrate people in? Because I don't believe it's going to change in the near term. We got to figure out how to live with it and how to make it better. Absolutely.
And Anoop, I'm going to come to you on this one. I think this is a good question. Everyone's given some great answers. So same question to you. What opportunities do you see to build or invest in this space?
So I think, Kyle, for me, this has been a watershed incident which has taken all over the world. I wish, this was something that had happened only in one corner of the world, so that only one part of us was actually touched and the other ones could continue as normal, but that's not what's happened. Why we're all on a Zoom call and all day long in our jobs all around the world is precisely because we're all equally affected. We're all talking the same language. So I think health and wellness is going to come to the fore. And we at Orias are definitely investing behind this entire trend. And within that, the key micro trend is greater degree of personalization. Remember when we used to go to these company conferences or any other things, we were given a 10-point checklist. Hey, do you eat seafood? Do you eat beef? Do you eat halal? So on and so forth. It all was meant for greater degree of personalization in that time. Now imagine that all of that is multiplied manyfold. All of us have different, preferences, allergies, what time of the day, whether you're going to have your coffee this way or that way. On what kind of lifestyle do you want to, do you want to lead? Do you want to run in the middle of the day? Do you want to run in the morning? Do you want to, walk? Do you don't want to run? Various people have various preferences. Health and wellness means different things for each one of us. There are 4 different versions of me that exist during the day as far as health and wellness, and I'm sure it is for the 3 of you over there as well. So that's one trend, and that's got to be captured. What's health and how do you dispense it? So greater businesses are going to come out of this. It's not going to be just about throwing some pills and supplements and some diet plans and it's all done and over. It's all in focus, and there is a change in household patterns of income and consumption that are going to happen in this direction. The other bit is about education. And I feel that, from the part of the world that we certainly, sort of look around over here, education is a big thing. Families are prepared to spend and invest behind education in a big way, disproportionately, and that trend is going to get more severe. And I link it to some of the trend that we are seeing in our workplaces as well, which is change in the work culture around work from home and all of that. it's going to bring about a need for upskilling and reskilling. The same resource cannot come back to the same office and operate in a different workflow equally productively. So they will have to be reskilled according to the new way of doing things, right? So this entire thing is going to have a sort of backflowing effect into the education system, right? So the education is going to undergo a change as well. The way it's being dispensed is going to undergo a change. The final product is going to look different. So education is another sector that we're betting heavily on. So these are all, these are two key spaces that I want to highlight today.
So quick follow-up, what will happen to productivity and work if schools say don't go back to class in person? So you mentioned education. You guys are looking at this very heavily. Do you see anything around productivity if everyone's just kind of working from home, right? It's one thing for one of us to be, but now the whole family is working from home. What do you think will happen to productivity and work in general if that doesn't change?
Yeah, I think what we will see is a reorganization of commercial space. We are worried about air conditioning at this point of time because nobody's found the vaccine, but even if somebody's found the vaccine, imagine that we will have a certain percentage of our workforce permanently working from home. So I think for those families, it is going to mean that they will relook around them and go for better options, go and shift accommodation to a house which suits these new and changed needs much better. Now that's going to have a ripple effect on all that's coming around you. There's already more food deliveries going into people's homes than in offices. That change has already happened, right? So there's more consumption of food and grocery items which is taking place at home because you're eating 3 or 4 meals at home. So I think all of that has already changed the trends. Now, as far as working spaces are concerned, we're going to see changes over there as well. We had this whole phenomenon of co-working, which took all over the world. WeWork was riding it. But how about co-meeting spaces? How about places which only have meeting spaces? So imagine there are meeting spaces of all sizes. You can hire a meeting space, do a meeting, and then disappear, right? Nobody needs to book that out for months or days together. You can, if you're doing a whole offsite, you can do it. You can, if you're doing a 6-people meeting, you call your client over there, you land up over there, you have your meeting, you have your internal meeting, no problem with that. And then, somebody goes back home because they're on work from home. Somebody goes back to the office because they're working from office. So I think we're going to see different permutations and combinations of workspaces also getting organized. Commercial reality is not going to be the same as it was organized before.
I mean, yeah, some people here in the States are actually renting hotel rooms for a few hours to kind of get out of the house to try a new workspace to have those types of meetings. So I think you're very much on point. It'll be interesting to see how far and how long that trend continues. So guys, before we get to closing thoughts, I had one question from a good investor friend of mine that got thrown out for this panel. And that was, who's the biggest threat to Zoom and potentially why? So Gary, you're a big fan of Zoom, as am I, been using it since day one. What do we see as maybe one of the up and coming threats, whether that be technology or a particular product set that could be challenging us on this platform?
Well, I mean, the biggest, the threat that I see and the threat I've experienced is getting hacked on a Zoom call and having it totally destroyed. So making sure that it's secure and that the information that's contained in the call is safe. So I believe that that's the biggest threat that I see right now to Zoom. I don't know in terms of the startups what's coming up, but that's the big thing I see. I mean, they're really dominating the space right now, and the quality's incredible.
Tess, I'm going to come to you. You and I live in a virtual world. We talk about this every now and then. What do you see as the biggest threat, or who do you see as the biggest threat to Zoom?
I think Zoom is an incredible company. I mean, Eric, I've definitely been a fan of him from the get-go, even though they were just seen as a video platform at a time when no one thought it was sexy. But look at it today, how valuable they have done and their interface. However, because of the fact that it has risen to the top, obviously the attention from Google Microsoft has been very, very active. And as we can see, all of us are getting our emails about the newest features and everything else that they're doing. And they have the smartest and the brightest that's trying to figure out how to be, 3 steps on top of Zoom now. I've seen many more people have, moved to those platforms. And obviously, I also feel any platform that's able to, as I forget which one, I think it's Google, the different backdrops that's built in, that's incredibly important, so that, we're all just, on Zoom all day. We need some variety. We need to brand. That's incredible. Of course, what the other panelists mentioned about, hacking is scary, but that's pretty easily solved with, really good technology. And I think, the others are featuring that. I know another startup, which, Kyle and I, with blockchain technology, they've also been able to focus. I think that's brave. They've done some different stuff that, have been pretty innovative, but, it's still a smaller market for them, and their brand awareness is not as high. And also, how many people can they actually host, so that, when I've been invited to participate in, those Hollywood concerts that, sponsored by Goldman Sachs, it has been decent, but there's still challenges. So I think any platform that is going to come out with scalability and have to host all the concerts and different events that we used to host in 5,000, 10,000, kind of capacity, those platforms that can handle that, and that's pretty specific, is going to have a dominance. And then they can come back to focusing on, individual smaller groups, which is already pretty easy. So I think those mass, adoption kind of platforms that they can host more is going to be incredible. And I'm even looking into that myself with friends that I plan to host bigger events offline and online. Thank you, Kyle.
I'm looking for the oasis. I'm ready to check in. I'm ready to go. Okay. You've got my buy-in. If you're building it out there, reach out, because I'm ready to go. I'm sure I can convince Tess, Gary, and Anoop to join me. So don't worry. Keep building the oasis. Guys, closing thoughts as we are here at the top of the hour. I've taken you outside of your partners' meetings for an extra 10 minutes, and I appreciate that. But closing thoughts. A lot has changed. A lot will change. We're going to see what comes, what stays, what doesn't. Love to get your closing thoughts on this. Where are you thinking? What are you thinking? Anoop, let's start with you, and we'll come around, and then we'll wrap up. And after your closing thoughts, if you can, give a quick shout out to where everyone can find you online as well. So Anoop, let's start with you.
Yeah, sure. So I think I already shared my views on education and health. So I think we see those trends really going forward. One of the things that I didn't touch upon was fintech. And that's going to be really important as well. One of the things that I think even Erika alluded to in the beginning of the session was people have seen the job losses. People have seen economic hardships because economies have gone back south in some way. Some of the businesses have got stopped, etc. So let's look at what's happened out here. Families are taking a good look at their finances all over again, right? Everyone's sort of looking at their houses, their mortgages, their children's educational expenses, the number of cars they have in the garage, and what use they have for it, and whatever else they have purchased in all these years and which is lying inside their house. So everyone's sort of looking going forward and saying, how can I manage my finances much better? And that has happened to all of us, right? And people who are running businesses and managing families as a result of that, they're even looking at it even harder, right? Because they've been hit by this entire thing. So financial management, both at a personal level and corporate level, that's another trend which is gonna take shape. We are seeing the ascent of tech stocks on Nasdaq and other places, right? So these tech stocks have really sort of massively zoomed up, if I may call it, because with Zoom leading the whole show anyway. So everyone's sort of looking at tech stocks now much more than ever before. So the Procter & Gamble's, the Colgate's, the Johnson & Johnson's, and the Unilever's, you're looking at your entire equity portfolio, you're looking at your pension fund, you're looking at your retirement corpus, you're saying, how can I lay out my finances much better? Because all of this is going to have an impact on how the economy is going to shape out in the coming years. So how can it not impact the way you're going to be investing, right? How can it not impact the way you're saving and putting your money across different assets and different instruments? And that's going to be another change. And that's another thing that we are looking at quite seriously in terms of investing. So I think that's another trend that I see. And yes, like to a question, where can I be found? Well, I'm the same name over here on the screen on LinkedIn. So do get in touch with me over there. And it's simple. It's Anoop at oriosvp.com. That's oriosventurepartners.com. So you can find me over there.
Wonderful.
Thanks
Thank you,
a lot, Carl.
Tess. Same to you.
I absolutely echo what he just said. Very good insight. I believe the future of, I think a lot about fintech and the reimagining how the world is banking, and it's actually here. So neobanks, Neobank, absolutely is what the future is. As we can see with Sterling Bank, how that company already IPO'd. The physical brick and mortar banks, do we really need them? With COVID, you can tell, right? The time and the regulation that has been set from the past, the millennials and even myself is absolutely not liking it with the cryptocurrency and all the usage that we are familiar with, but that has not allowed for mass adoption. Neobank, back to that. The banks that I think potentially can have the winners in this category, as we see, one of my most favorite companies, they've definitely have thrived. It has not been easy, but now they are one of the darlings, is Robinhood. I know the founders from 2013, amazing MIT technologists. I championed them from the start. Sand Hill Road VCs could not wrap their head around free trading. How are you going to compete with Charles Schwab E-Trade on a cell phone? And they just could not imagine that. And you're just targeting these young millennials who don't have money. However, everyone's waking up now with Sequoia's newest round of $280 million from the late stage fund. They double down, is the fact that Robinhood they already captured the user's heart and mind of these millennials. Who is our future? It is them. How are they banking? As soon as they IPO, which likely will happen in the next year or two, or maybe 3, right? They are going to be able to have, a mass war chest that they can then branch out and be the bank. They can absolutely, with their AI technology, their stellar technology, branch into, lending, branch into, they own the market of, these amazing, base of users that's going to be, having to, move their banking over because they already have such a great AI platform. So I really believe that, that company is going to be as household recognized as Facebook, as Google, and they're going to be one of the winning fintech companies that you're going to see with all the innovation that they've allowed for gamification involved in how people are using it. So just yesterday, my friends they put together a Robinhood party at their backyard, 6 feet away. Everyone's talking about it. These are the 55-year-old moms, but their kids are at Apple, and they're there as engineers. Like, Mom, please use this. So it's incredible just to see them talking about this. Super exciting. Yeah.
It's great. It's a great application. Where can everyone find you, Tess?
Yeah, LinkedIn is the best, Tess Howell, and also Twitter, Tess Howell1. Thank you, everyone.
Wonderful. Gary, quick closing thoughts. Apologies, we're at time at this point, but quick closing thoughts. Where can everyone find you? You're on mute, my friend.
You can find me on LinkedIn. So Gary Fowler, Fowler, Gary at GSDVS.com, GSD Venture Studios. So if you got an incredible AI company and you want to go global, we can help.
And Gary has 2 great outstanding articles he mentioned on Forbes and Mediums. I have links to both and will provide them to you, our audience. Definitely check them out if you haven't already. They are great, great reads. And thank you all to our speakers for staying today and also joining us on, again, Partner Monday. We do appreciate this and appreciate your time. Thank you very much and have a wonderful day. To your audience, thank you for tuning in. If you have any questions, comments, you want to follow up, we're all available on social media and our respected websites as mentioned. And stay tuned because we do have another episode of VCTV following right here in just a moment. So panelists, investors, I'm going to say goodbye. Thank you. Let you all fall off. We're going to welcome up our next speaker to your audience while we are transitioning. If you like what you hear today and every day on VCTV, click that subscribe button or give us a thumbs up as well to this video. Thank you, Anoop. I appreciate it. Wonderful, guys. Everyone, again, thank you, Gary. Tess, I know you've got a thumbs up, but you're on mobile right now, so I'll give it to you as well. Thank you. We'll have you fall off. And next up, I want to welcome a very, very awesome, outstanding, brilliant, I can't give enough words to describe her, wonderful person I had a chance of speaking with last week on Friday as we were talking about the future of fintech and blockchain, along with many other industries. Dr. Mahila, welcome back to the show.
Hello, Kyle. It's so great to be with you again. And thank you so much for the nice introduction. I mean, I hope my video is going to show soon. And I think it's shy because I am, blushing here from your introduction. And anyway, my plan is to share my screen. I do not know if you can see me in the video. I mean,
it's still, it's still warming up. So while it's warming up, I'll give everyone a quick introduction. So to your audience, thank you again for tuning in to another episode of VCTV. I'm Kyle Ellicott, your host, joined by, again, the wonderful and amazing, brilliant Dr. Mahila, and a big shout out and thank you to Elena, to the entire LA Token team for making today and today's edition of VCTV possible. And Dr. Mahila is actually here to speak with us about a very exciting subject, continuing our last discussion, and that is accelerating the transition to a resilient world in the fourth industrial revolution. And if you may remember, a few episodes ago on VCTV, Dr. Mahila and a panelist of investors joined us as we talked about Industry 4.0 and what was changing around this new world that we have been accelerating in for quite some time, from Industry 3.0, which we touched on, thankfully, to some of our guests, to where we are today and looking beyond. And so, Mahila, I'm going to turn it over to you. We can see your screen. We've got a slide open. And
I'm happy that now I'm okay within the rules to share my screen.
You are. Mahila broke my one rule of not sharing the screen, and she did it gracefully twice, not once, twice. But now the floor is yours. I'm going to turn it over to you.
I'm legal and I'm within bounds, and thank you so much. I am already pumped up by a previous panel, and the panelists have been so much aligned with what I will have to say here. Because indeed, the current multi-crisis, as I would call them, are poised to reveal the vulnerabilities and challenge our ways of doing things and make us reconsider. As we are confronted right now with these challenges, it's good to ask ourselves, what will be the new normal? So I've recently seen this proposal to, if I would wear this, definitely I can go to a stadium, to the Olympics, they wouldn't have to cancel it and so on and so forth. But my question is, do I really want to live like this for the rest, or at least until a vaccine is going to be on, and keep it for the next pandemic? So what this reflects and made me remember is how we look at doing things. So do we optimize and govern for risk or for resilience? So risk is exposure to danger, and it is also defined as probability to be harmed. So if we want to minimize that for the new normal, then it's more or less a defensive posture. Let's see if there are other ways of doing things. But before that, I'd like to underline that I'm working with the World Economic Forum. And we have every year a global risks report where the pandemic was number 29, and obviously now it's going up. It went to number 0 just, so rapidly. However, as we see right now, the most risks are interdependent because we don't have only pandemics. We have the economy, we have the price of oil, we have riots, we have killer bees, if killer hornets, so a lot of risks which are striking at once. As such, I think it's, better to think, how can we be prepared to be surprised? And having worked with emergency response organizations for a long time, I can say that their logo, their motto, no plan survives contact with a disaster in the making, is pretty good to apply it right now. As such, it may be time for us to move from a risk-oriented way of doing things to resilience. And resilience would be that kind of offensive, not necessarily defensive posture. And I do not say get out without a mask or without protection. What I say is let's create immunity, just like your previous speakers were mentioning about involving technologies in a different way and following and riding on those trends in order to ride the wave of complexity and interdependent risks that is striking right now. So the question is, how do we create a resilient world? And of course, in this transition, it's a good idea to think what resilience is. So being an engineer, for me, I'm looking in terms of systems. And a system is resilient when it can absorb sudden and external changes. So resilience and robustness are pretty much interdependent. So if we think about organization, the capacity of an organization to reorganize over spatial and functional scale would give it robustness. Like, for example, reconfiguration for safety. Airlines immediately coming up with new designs in order to maintain business continuity. And that makes, of course, and gives them resilience. And of course, resilience governance, as I mentioned before, would refer to how we are handling the vulnerabilities in our system. So we can be prepared when the next crisis strikes. And right now we have examples. For example, already in April in Maryland, for certain customers, which were, the demand for whose employees were demanding grooming standards, barber shops have received special permission to open, to take care of those particular customers. But in order to optimize and to handle the vulnerabilities which COVID-19 have brought into the system, some rules have been defined for them, like by appointment only. Only those with grooming standards request from their employees should do it. Then they should be all logged in case something happens and the barber gets COVID-19. They can track the ones who have been exposed eventually. And of course, wear masks and disinfect. So these are all rules that would, we can call them rules of resilience governance. So resilience is actually the ability to bounce back. And of course, there are several bounce back strategies now circulating. And if you want, you can take a note of this matrix here with the 5 Ps: position, plan, perspective, project, and preparedness. So you can evaluate how your business is doing during the crisis, right? Of how it may do after the crisis, and prepare it for the new normal. Of course, as our previous speakers from the panel and our panel on the fourth industrial revolution underlined last week, remote work is number one. So we can have the patient come to the doctor remotely, or vice versa, the doctor come to the patient. And if the doctor comes to the patient remotely, it can collect through this robot repurposed for this various samples and analyze and take the temperature and so on and so forth, so that the doctor can really diagnose and give advice. Of course, remote work, which was also mentioned very much by your previous panelists. And these are technologies already existing, which the Defense Department, for example, are employing quite regularly because they really were decentralized. Yeah. So all over the world, and then when they need such infrastructures, collaborative tools like Miro, which is an excellent tool by Adobe, enabling people to work together if they put their 3D glasses even from the virtual offices and be productive and feel that they are again together yet apart, as Anup was saying during the panel. So Ford also again on April 3rd is turning to VR to keep vehicle development on track. But this, now we have the office homes which were discussed also in the previous panel again. And this is how they look like. Of course, a little bit of food doesn't hurt, but all this work, including diagnosis of a car, not only the development and the new design, can be co-created and done and performed remotely, especially involving technologies like blockchain and artificial intelligence, as well as 3D, of course, for this smart asset. So the car can come to me if I am the repair person, or can go to the repair shop from my garage if I am the car owner, and tell, virtually of course, and tell the repairman, okay, so here is what hurts me. The car can even have voice. So we can eliminate paper and we can really move into the digital world completely through characteristics, which of course we are all used to from the blockchain world. Of course, identity, history, voice, rights, programmable, using contracts. And now the contracts are moving from the page into space. So these vehicles, these three-dimensional technologies, VR, AR, can enable us to be there virtually, but diagnose the physical you. So it is, of course, seamless accounts and currency and neobanks and all what Tess was talking about, and again, Anoop, in the previous panel. They are already implemented in China, for example, in other parts of the world. Now they are going to be adopted with higher speed because they will save lives. I mean, the people at the counter in all stores, in the grocery store, and so on and so forth, they can be protected if such technologies are actually active. So we can pay seamlessly. But even more so, we can use spatial technologies and artificial intelligence to reorganize our storages as well as to reorganize our stores in order to optimize also for safety, in the sense that I am distributing the goods in my store such that, according to demand, such that I can avoid many people going at the same part at once. And this can be done through, again, advances in technologies like spatial contracts, as I was mentioning, which are enabling now total automation, that a robot, for example, would have this perception of 3D and be able to optimize the storage into like, for example, at Costco, yes, and we do not need people anymore for that. We can completely automate. So such automation is very useful from supply chain, asset management, preventive maintenance, as well as real-time inventory. And these technologies are already there. Now, if we put them on blockchain, we can integrate the payments as well. So I can have robotics fill my order at Whole Foods with all the goods and the payments done seamlessly, as well as the autonomous car or truck bring them at my home and leave them on my porch. So totally contactless deliveries. And of course, new trends, like for example, robot nurses, as I was showing last week in our investment panel. These are new trends. And of course, just like the storage robots, we can involve robot nurses now, which would save the lives of the nurse, or also, yes, reduce exposure to COVID-19, as well as be able to work 24/7 and do less or probably no mistakes when collecting data. And so the nurse can only intervene when needed, for example, for a physical intervention that the robot wouldn't be safe for. So for all this to happen, however, we need technologies, and we need to think, as Tess was talking about this compliance as a service. So we need the robots and the AIs to have legal personality, and this is a concept which has been pioneered in Malta, which they are pioneers with blockchain and technology, definitely. So we can have and defer for example, responsibility and accountability to a machine in case something wrong happens. So now we have all these people and things coexisting, and I call this socio-technical combinatorics. So how do I actually govern such socio-technical ecosystems or communities in order to create a better world and a more resilient world? Well, it turns out that all these ones which you see here are networks. So I'm going to give you a very short course in network resilience and in network science, just so you see how we can actually self-organize such communities by simulations and simulation modeling. And then I'll give you an example. So, networks have functions like transport of information, material, energy, people, and this results in flows of work, material, energy, cars, as well as diffusion like we are now confronted with for diseases, viruses, and information. And in the context of robustness, such flows can lead to cascading failures under failures of critical hubs. So if we want to relate network topology to the network properties, we can actually optimize a network function for resilience. So this is done through a connectivity matrix, which is a map that maps outputs to inputs, depending which outputs do we want to optimize for, like, for example, robustness. And then the input attributes like, network properties, degree distribution, resource exchange across links, and so on and so forth. So we can actually control the flows in a network to optimize robustness. And that is called tuning the input attributes to maximize robustness. So therefore, the network topology, how we organize the nodes and where do we put what in a network is extremely important. So these dynamical processes that, like the flows, are affecting the network's evolution, and we have to optimize for that, like traffic and flow and structural change. So how would those affect robustness? So for example, when the CDC and Dr. Fauci is saying stay home, he is doing that in order to optimize the flow of the virus from node to node, because if you are isolated, then you do not interact with others, and as such, there is no link, and you are not part of the network that is spreading the virus. So if you want to optimize for social robustness when it comes to the virus, the best thing is to stay home. That's why he is telling us that. So, and as such, we can optimize for many other things. So in this case, with Dr. Fauci, we create barriers to cascading failures by staying home, simply by staying home. But there are other ways in which we can optimize for organizational and network robustness. And John Doyle, professor, very, very famous professor from California Institute of Technology, he is actually the pioneer of network science with regard to optimizing for resilience. Also, Boardman and Saucer, in their book System Thinking, have come up with ways in which we can optimize for organizational resilience, in which you can take complex social ensembles and reorganize them within an organization across various properties like connectivity, belonging, autonomy, and so on and so forth. And with this, to create the capacity for self-organization in your institution, in your company, where members can create the organization, which in turn shapes the individual. So coming back to our initial question, how do we create a resilient world? We have seen, and we keep seeing, so many examples in the real world now in this pandemic. For example, the social network operating system is working through various social innovators, like Chef Andre, for example, who created out of his Chefs for America enterprise, the World Central Kitchen, in which he did so many goods, which probably I will miss some of them. One, he rescued the restaurant industry because he hired a lot of people whose restaurants got closed. in order to deliver meals, to prepare and deliver meals to the emergency responders, to the poor, to those in need. So he really contributed a lot to helping us staying positive during quarantine, and it is a model of social innovator. Other kinds of social innovators, as it was mentioned, aging in place, as Anup was mentioning in the previous panel. Indeed, Age Well has created, a platform that enables the elderly to stay away from those terrible, terrible nursing homes, which have been, transformed in some places in voting places, and so many people died, and so much this enabling of the virus spread, nursing homes were called killing machines, perfect killing machines. So Age Well has enabled a peer-to-peer care delivery model that, elderly people who are in better shape than others or healthy, they can care and support others like them. So it's a community of elderly, which is really rocking right now, reducing isolation, supporting communities, and especially with emotional health, because emotional health, of course, contributes also to our physical health. So another example is emerging from a social entrepreneur that rose to the challenge during the Hurricane Harvey. So this is John Cole, who realized that actually so many lives were lost because the incident command system and the FEMA are ruling themselves through a very rigid hierarchical organization. So until the chain of command can take action, so going from up and down and up and down, people were dying. So he actually created this social network in order to enable people to rent boats, to respond quickly from the fringes to the need. So he is bringing now the world together to empower people and make positive change, and adapting his platform to COVID-19. So we have all this, we see initiative from the fringes, from the masses, from the society, putting into motion this social network operating system. So we see this paradigm shift from the ways in which we are doing things from top down to bottom up, and they are much more productive, as Anup was saying. Personalization. So we have a new mode of production that goes beyond the institution. Person-centric. It's causing a change in equilibrium. So it's not institution-centric anymore. It is person-centric. And it goes from place to place, to person, from person in job to person best able. So of course can be a threat for our organizations, but I think it definitely a welcome attribute and property of our society, because we can do a lot of good with them by linking the right person where it is needed at the right time, like the examples of social entrepreneurs, which I showed before. And I've been fascinated by this, especially that with decentralized communities and which the blockchain is unleashing now, the technology is ready to deploy such social network operating systems with amazing technologies. But my friend Robin Chase, who is the founder of Deepcar, she wrote a book called Peers Incorporated, in which she actually examined the properties and the rules that would be able to deploy such social network operating systems, as well as Michael Albert, who actually wrote Power to the Edge before, and with whom I worked during my interactions with the joint operations, joint forces after 9/11, and as well as for setting up for the Vancouver Olympics. So he actually transmuted his wisdom from Power to the Edge, which was mainly applied in that the context of emergency response and defense, into society. So he wrote this book, Participatory Economics, Parecon, Life After Capitalism. So there are a few principles that emerge from these luminaries, and of course, much more than what I can encompass in a talk here. So I recommend that you actually read the books and see how actually we can generate social innovation, and that these innovators and emerging leaders and who are taking the power to the edge and create these amazing things, rescuing people when needed, immediately taking action, there are rules that we can learn from them and apply them further, or either as social innovators or as for our institutions to improve them. And it was discussed also in the panel before about the education system. So obviously this has been hit so, like this one, not only this, of course, the healthcare, the economy, but the education system was hit really hard. And it exposed vulnerabilities that we were not looking at before. So for example, now Harvard and all the Ivy League universities are enabling people to apply without the test that usually they were requesting. So it's obvious that they have seen that those tests didn't bring too much information. So the question, of course, with this is, what can our institutions learn from the social network operating system? And now, of course, when it comes to the education system, we can see the formation of networks in which teachers are consulting with each other and are much more collaborative across schools and states and even across the world. So they can now respond to particular needs. For example, if a class needs a specialist to teach. I was summoned by Columbia University to teach a class about big data and AI and how we can actually deploy the privacy rules that Tess was talking about in the previous panel. So it's much more agile. Everything is changing from a rigid system in which our students were actually indoctrinated so that innovation was always caught in the web of rules, and we were, prepared for factory or office to be cogs in those offices. Now, much more experimentation and unleashing the creativity of the students, which is, of course, if you see, we are this thing here is very similar to a risk averse. So why not keep the students a bit more, let's say, with this stuck in these rigid structures? Because if they are unleashed, they may ask us uncomfortable questions. Well, I think it's time for them to do so. So in order to foster resilience and create a resilient society, it is time to change our paradigm and educate for the creative economy with totally different attributes, as you can see here. So it's time to ask ourselves in our institutions, which profile do we manage? Do we want to manage the cog, or do we want to manage the creative person, the creative individual who would contribute, especially to the agility and the success of our organization? So if we look at your organizational continuum, culture is structured by the conventions of coordination. So I was talking about the rigid hierarchies, but there are others, like, for example, responsible autonomies, which have a more network structure, as I showed before with the education system, but as well something in between, in which I can set a goal from the top, but I can leave the people at the bottom in the organization to self-organize in order to reach that goal faster. And these are the structures I was talking about, the network, and this in between, the hybrid, which is also called holarchy. Holonic is a paradigm, is a philosophy in which shows that actually the natural order has evolved through this tension between autonomy and cooperation. So we have the cooperation, which is incited from the top, but then we leave the individuals here at the fringes to self-organize in order, in the most productive manner, to achieve the goals. And it also turns out that such structures are also more capable to deal with complexity versus the hierarchy. So coming back to how do we create the capacity for self-organization in our institution? How do we implement these architectures of participation? How can we achieve effects with resources which we cannot control? Our very notion of governance and management are being challenged by these social innovators and by the need to respond and much faster and to cope with the emerging complexity. Of course, we are still thinking of the risks. However, how about thinking of creating a social network operating system as a new type of personnel platform in our institutions, in which we have these new forms of social organization modeled in our institutions. So we can optimize for user participation and contributions by minimizing barriers to entry. As Mitch Kapor was saying, famously saying, architecture is politics and politics is architecture. If we are thinking of how to deploy such architecture, and coming back again to the panel in which personalization and this individual empowerment were brought to the fore, if we are thinking of how we are now, our data is actually extracted by the current architecture and centralized platforms, and what the blockchain is offering in order to empower us with our data, and that we can give and choose to give our data, but in exchange receive something like, for example, priority to a medicine or to a vaccine. So we can change and design and define much better architectures that would preserve our privacy, as Tess was mentioning before, but also would enable us to participate and choose and make choices by when we give and what we give from this data. So I call this, because it mirrors so much the natural world, I call it organic governance. So we can actually have the institutional norms emerge from the individual agent interactions. So it is very similar to how, for example, an ant colony function. Through these individual agent interactions, the ants communicate, and via pheromones, they behave like there is a plan and tells them that from the nest to the food source, there is this optimal path. But the only difference is that they achieve this optimal path by what I was showing here, by their individual interactions. So that is, how a complex adaptive system works and how nature enabled such complex adaptive systems to emerge. And we want to emulate that also in our organizations to make them more effective. And we can actually do that if we are using simulation modeling or multi-agent simulations that are now enabled so much with decentralized artificial intelligence that SingularityNet, which is a company that I am advising, is implying and involving in its technology. So we have here the physical world, then we can model it as a digital world, and then we can run simulations and reorganize the physical world optimally, let's say, not only for maximum productivity, but also for maximum safety of the people who are returning to work. So we can reshuffle things in the physical world according to what our simulations reveal through regarding optimizing the network, as I was mentioning in the beginning, for those attributes. And this can be applied from production coordination in manufacturing and in our offices to governance, as I was mentioning. So we are actually applying that to hospitals and research lab by reorganizing production. For example, in manufacturing, obviously, when Tesla reorganized its plant to produce masks, obviously, yes, and ventilators, obviously, yes, that was possible through those simulation models. But also in hospitals and research labs, we can achieve that by reorganizing our resources and enabling a larger collaboration across hospitals and across countries, across boundaries, to achieve treatments and a vaccine much faster. So such infrastructures and such technologies and such simulation models are really infusing agility of response into our infrastructure. So we can deploy much faster according to the need. And with this, I'd like to close by underlining that indeed the new normal can be either a very stiff and risk-averse world, but it can also be a beautiful world in which technologies can really co-live with us and co-create with us and enable us agility of response through these reconfigurable work processes. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you as well, Mihaela. And just a quick question, if I could. Following our last panel, we talked a lot about some of the areas you mentioned and went back and forth on. But one thing that I did touch on was, where were the areas of opportunity here? So if you were to kind of pick maybe one or two areas that either investors should be looking at to invest or entrepreneurs should be looking at to build, out of all of this you just spoke with us about, which was brilliant, where are those areas that people should be paying attention to right now?
Absolutely. So there are so many, but I will underline where I think, and also, of course, it's all subjective. So definitely in healthcare, bringing more artificial intelligence to healthcare, enabling, for example, robot nurses. Robot nurses are not only there for the comfort or for not to infect patients and so on and so forth, but they are practically computers, in which, of course, they are calculating and they can really achieve that personalization of the treatment that the particular patient needs. And they can achieve it on the spot. So such artificial intelligence, advanced technologies are absolutely, they will be the next $1 billion, the next unicorns. Then, of course, AR, VR, augmented reality, virtual reality, that enable all this return to work and business continuity. Definitely, these are huge on my list as well. And anything to do with automation, autonomous cars, and everything to do with remote work, as I showed you those platforms, and again, mediated by AR and VR. And this new space related spatial contracts, 3D, which we have neglected because, we didn't measure in 3D before. So we cannot optimize what we don't measure. So it's clear, yes. This can save us trillions of dollars. So artificial intelligence, blockchain are crucial for this.
Well, and I think you mentioned it during your talk, and it's been mentioned as well in the past on VCTV, is we're seeing this convergence, right, of all of these technologies come together and work and empower each other as well. So, while we may not have much in terms of historic 3D data to measure for the future, it is something that thankfully we have other data points, right, from other technologies that will help empower it going forward, which is very, very exciting. And Mihaela, we are almost at time. So I do want to make sure two things. One, the presentation you shared, if that's something you can send to me, I can share out, or if there's a website that everyone can go to check that out. And then two, where can everyone find you online to further connect and dive deeper into this exciting topic with you?
Absolutely. So, and we are in touch, Kyle. No problem with the presentation. Yes, I'll do that. And to get in touch with me, you have my name here. I do not know. I'm sorry. I don't see myself. I don't know if you can see me in the video.
Worries.
But just Google my name, or I think the best thing is to put it in LinkedIn. And I use LinkedIn. I really like the platform. And let's talk. Yes.
Wonderful. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mihaela. Have a wonderful afternoon. And thank you to our entire audience at VCTV. We greatly appreciate your time today. If you loved what you heard, not just with Dr. Mihaela, but also in our earlier panel, please make sure you click that subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up. We want to bring more great content to you like this as well. And as Mihaela said, we are all available on social media, LinkedIn, in our respected areas. Please do reach out for follow-up. We're excited to hear from you and connect further. A big thank you to Elena and to the entire LA Token team. I'm Kyle Ellicott. Mihaela, thank you. Everyone have a wonderful day, and we'll see you back here tomorrow for another edition of VCTV.